What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the Counting Wisdom podcast. I wanted to talk about my view on the millennium. Um, you know, I pretty much hold a view that Jesus reigns on the earth for 1,000 years, but if you followed at least my last few videos, I do like to keep an open mind to certain parts of prophecy that we have to piece together. And so you may have heard that Christ is going to reign on the earth for 1,000 years. And so it says that really in the book of Revelation. One of my points about kind of some specifics is that whenever I read the Christ will reign for 1,000 years, I actually don't read on the earth. It just says Christ reigned for 1,000 years, and then it said the dead who were slain, I think, by the Antichrist, lived again and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. And so, in my opinion, I can kind of agree with how someone came to the conclusion that, we reign in heaven for 1,000 years. That they're really talking about the millennium in heaven and not necessarily reigning 1,000 years on the earth. And so, I think that there are scriptures that really talk about, Isaiah, Ezekiel, I think it is, but really Isaiah is the ones that I really know of that mention the millennium. And one thing that it does say that, it says, how great it will be. It doesn't necessarily say that, there's no passage in Isaiah that says, hey, this is specifically talking about the millennium, And so a lot of scholars do have to, kind of piece it together, and, they have to kind of, induce, what it means. And so, one of the passages in Isaiah that, of course, I'm not necessarily going to quote because, I just don't have that reference in front of me. But it's how a child will die at 100 years old if he's cursed. And I think it also says that, God's people will live as long as trees do. And so, when it says that, it's hard to really piece that together in heaven, because we're going to live longer than trees do in heaven, and so it's hard to kind of piece that together to say that, living as long as trees do applies to anything other than the earth. The other part is a child dies at 100 if they're cursed. Once we get to heaven, at least before God makes a new heavens and a new earth, there is no more death. And especially if you are in heaven, there's no more death. And clearly it's describing that passage, even though you could try to come to some conclusions like, he's just talking about the wicked on earth. But, clearly it's saying that scripture passage for both earth and heaven. And so, you know, I think it's important to really, you know, keep scriptures in context, um, and so I believe that the millennium is on earth for 1,000 years. Now, there's a few other scriptures that I want to kind of point to, that kind of say something different. You know, for example, when Peter says that we look for a new heavens and a new earth where righteousness dwells, and you know, in the language that he's using, it's kind of sounding as if, you know, hey, that's the next thing that is going to happen, is a new heavens and a new earth. You know, we look forward to a new heavens and a new earth, you know, but, you know, at the same time, you know, a whole lot of language in the New Testament is, you know, them kind of thinking that, you know, this new world would be, you know, right around the corner. I mean, you know, that's what a lot of them thought, is, you know, hey, Jesus' second coming is, you know, tomorrow. And, you know, and so, but anyway, Peter says that, and then, you know, Revelation does not say necessarily, if you were to go look at their language in Revelation, you know, it does not necessarily say they lived and reigned on the earth. But in the book of Revelation, it says that Satan is loosed from his prison to deceive the nations that are on the earth after the 1,000 years are over. So that passage kind of implies that, you know, hey, there was 1,000-year period on the earth that, you know, Satan was bound for, you know, for that 1,000 years. And, you know, now he was let loose, and, you know, he goes to deceive people. So, in my opinion, you know, it has to be the millennium on the earth, because, you know, passages do point to that. And when it says that nations are deceived again by Satan, you know, it doesn't seem like that's talking about in heaven, right? You know, there's not, even though there's mixed multitude of people in heaven, you know, there's not necessarily deception happening in heaven, you know, as far as we know, you know, there isn't. And so, I think that's important to note. And so, you know, I think regardless of whether it's in heaven or on earth, you know, some people say the millennium is in heaven. Some people say, no, it's on earth. I think definitely we can conclude that, you know, the book of Revelation has not happened yet, for one. And two, you know, it's not all allegory or symbolism. You know, there are some direct language statements made that should not have us thinking that, you know, oh, that's completely a metaphor, you know. And so I think that's important to note, is that, you know, it's not something in the past, or, you know, something that, you know, is just interpreted to be something that it's not. You know, it's a literal 1,000 years that Christ is going to reign. You know, it seems to be before, you know, the new heavens and the new earth. It's not, you know, because why would it say that Christ is only reigning for 1,000 years when we know Christ is going to reign forever? So, you know, why would it say only 1,000 years, so that's just something to keep in mind. And anyway, we also know that I think regardless, we're also going to be with Jesus Christ, irregardless of, whether it's in heaven or on earth, we're going to be with Jesus Christ. And so, it's going to be a great time. And, I think that's just something to remember when thinking about, when is the millennium, or, what's going to happen. I think it's important to know that, especially when a person dies, they instantly go to be with the Lord. Of course, I really want to emphasize if they're right with God, if they're in right relationship with God, they instantly go to be with the Lord. Otherwise, instantly a person goes to hell. And so that's just important to remember. And a lot of the details of prophecy, I believe, are written in such a way that it sparks debate. It sparks different ideas. And so thanks so much for checking out this podcast. I just wanted to give my opinion on the millennium. Hey, it would be great if we didn't necessarily have to come back to the earth and, reign for 1,000 years. Sometimes we can think like that. Like, oh, I don't want to come back to this place. Like, I'm done. And, it would be great to just stay in heaven, but, maybe we do. But I think that there are certain languages that when talking about, the millennium, that it seems to apply to, that, excuse me, sorry about that, that millennium. And so, it's important to note that. So anyway, thanks so much, and I will talk to you on the next one. See ya.